Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday. This week, we are talking about stuff you can do with your dog to potentially reduce reactive behavior or other problem behaviors on walks. So these are things that you would do before you go out on a walk. So let's jump right in and see. Some of these are pretty simple. All right. So pre-walk activities that could reduce reactive behavior, pulling, other problem behaviors. Oh, by the way, if you do have a question, let me go back. During the presentation, just go ahead and post it as a comment under wherever you're watching the video. It'll come up for me. And if you're watching this as a recording, you can still post a comment and I'll get an alert. All right. So who is this meant for, today's little talk on pre-walk activities? So if you've got a dog who has some problem behaviors on walks, maybe lunges and barks at stuff, dogs, people. Maybe your dog jumps up and grabs the leash, likes to play tug with it. Your dog pulls to sniff things or to try to chase animals. And especially if some of these things are true and you feel like your training is kind of stalled out on walks, this should be helpful to you. Or maybe, I guess, I don't know your dog, but I'm hoping this framework and way of thinking about pre-walk activities will be helpful. All right, just a quick note, if you do have a dog who lunges or snaps at people or other animals you encounter on walks, think about what you can do to make your dog safer out in the world, like a muzzle, 2 leashes, a secure harness, just to make sure that while you're in this process of training, you're not putting anyone else at risk. All right. So what are pre-walk activities, or what do I mean by pre-walk activities? This can be anything your dog enjoys that you do right before your walk. So something like a game of fetch, a game of tug, chasing a flirt pole, maybe some scent work, sniffing games, a dog play date perhaps. And it's I see something's obscuring the text, just a second. It'll be most helpful to you if you can match the behavior or the pre-walk activity to what you think at least the reinforcers are for your dog's problem behavior. And I hope that'll become clearer as we go through the slides today. So we're not just choosing, you could choose randomly, but we're not just choosing randomly. Okay, so how do you choose pre-walk activity? So you could choose randomly, just pick some and give it a try and see if you get any results. But you would need to, and actually no matter what you do, you should track behavior before and after or with or without whatever pre-walk activities you choose to see if you actually are getting some results. And I know it feels like, well, why do I have to write it down? Won't I be able to tell if my walk is better? And the answer is maybe not. We have had clients, and actually I've been in the same boat myself, where I felt like something was better or felt like something was worse. And when I looked at the actual numbers I was collecting, things weren't as I thought they were. I thought something was getting worse and it was actually getting better, or vice versa. So our kind of impression or gut feeling about how things are going isn't always very accurate. Now, at the end of the presentation today, I'm going to give you a link where you can get a free little behavior tracking spreadsheet I made for a single intervention. So I'll give it to you at the end. All right, so like I said, you could just pick some stuff and try it and then record what you get, see if you get results. I prefer to at least try to match what I think my dog gets out of a problem behavior with the pre-walk activity. And don't worry, I'll tell you more about this. So those of you who have been with us before, this will look familiar. We've talked about this framework for thinking about and planning interventions for problem behavior. We've got at the bottom the consequence. Let me see where I go after this. Nope. The consequence, so that's like what happens right after your dog's problem behavior and why we think they're doing it, what they're getting out of it. The opportunity, which we're not really going to talk about today, but the opportunity or the trigger for the behavior is what comes right before the behavior reliably. And then motivation is the motivation to do the problem behavior to get that consequence. So these are all places that we can intervene when we're trying to change or decrease problem behavior. Now, today, we're not going to really talk about that, the triggers for problem behavior. We're going to focus on motivation and consequence, mostly motivation. So I'm just cleaning up the slide a bit so it's easier to look at. Now, when we are working with a private client, one of the things we'll first try to figure out is what are the potential reinforcers, or what are the potential reinforcers for the dog's problem behavior? So what's happening after the problem behavior that could be, keeping it going, the reason the dog's doing the behavior. And then once we know that, one thing we can think about is, okay, well, what would affect the motivation to get that consequence? And is there anything we can do to change that motivation? So when we look at pre-walk activities, which is our topic today, I'm going to put it into this framework to explain why the pre-walk activities could have a positive impact on your dog's behavior on walks. We're thinking about how to decrease the behavior to get the consequence from the problem behavior. In order to do that, we're going to think about, okay, how can I set up my pre-walk activities so they kind of mirror the consequences that my dog would get from doing the problem behavior? How can I give them something of what they're getting out of the problem behavior, but before the walk? And then my hope is that if I can give that stuff to my dog before the walk, we're going to have decreased motivation to try to get more of it on the walk, if that makes sense. We're going to talk through some examples if this seems a little bit too theoretical. All right, so here's our first, it's still a hypothetical example, but a real life problem that I bet some of you deal with. I certainly have dogs who enjoy squirrels. So say you've got a dog who pulls towards squirrels on walks. And when they pull towards squirrels, often the squirrel will kind of run away a little bit, and your dog gets to do a little mini chase. So the consequence of them pulling or lunging toward a squirrel on a walk could be that they're getting a little bit of chasing a critter out of it. That might be one of the reinforcers. So then the motivation that I want to try to decrease or to meet before I head out on a walk with my pre-walk activities is this motivation to chase stuff. Is there some way I can kind of damp that down a little bit before I head out on my walk? So what is like chasing squirrels that we can do for our dogs before our walk? I'm going to give you some suggestions, but if you have any ideas you don't see here, I'd love to hear them. Just put them in the comments. So what things could we do with our dog before we head out on a walk that is kind of like chasing squirrels that might reduce their interest in chasing squirrels on the walk? So this chasing behavior, is running after something that flees, that runs away from you. And there are lots of games for dogs that simulate this. So chasing a ball, playing fetch can simulate, chasing a prey item, or chasing a stuffy, a stuffed toy, a squeaky toy. Chasing that lure at the end of a flirt pole can be a really good one for dogs who love to chase stuff, chase critters. It doesn't have to be a toy. My dogs, especially Juno, who's my very high prey drive husky girl, loves to chase kibbles or treats. And I can even play that game just down the hall in the house. You could do a whole breakfast that way if you wanted to. And of course, you could, if you have a backyard full of squirrels, perhaps giving your dog some time in the backyard to chase those squirrels might decrease their motivation to chase squirrels on the walk. Okay, so going back to this framework then, remember we are trying to line up our pre-walk activities with the consequence of whatever our dog's problem behavior is in order to decrease motivation to get that on the walk. In our squirrel example, because we think the dog's getting some squirrel chasing, or squirrel fleeing, we don't know, but we think maybe this could be a reinforcer of pulling or lunging towards squirrels on the walk. We want to decrease the motivation to get that, the motivation to chase stuff. And so maybe in this instance, just for a specific example, I'd say, okay, well, I have this dog who lunges at squirrels like crazy on walks. One thing I might try to see if it makes a difference is playing with a flirt pole for 20 minutes in the backyard before we head out on our walk and see if we get any change in behavior on the walk. All right, let's look at another example that a lot of you with reactive dogs deal with. And this one is lunging at other dogs on walks. Now, what is the consequence your dog gets from lunging at dogs? I don't know what your dog gets out of it. And this is a hypothetical example. And there are certainly many reinforcers that could be in play. In our hypothetical example, I'm going to assume that this dog has at some point been able to sniff, greet, play with other dogs when they pulled toward them or lunged toward them. You know, maybe when you go to the dog park, your dog pulls and lunges a bit on the way there. Maybe occasionally if you see a dog your dog likes out on a walk, you let them go say hi, and there's a little bit of problem behavior leading up to the greeting. So let's pretend that in our hypothetical situation, we have a dog who lunges at other dogs on walks, and at least one of the reinforcers for that behavior is getting to the dog and getting to sniff them or play with them. So then the motivation that I need to try to decrease is that motivation to, sniff another dog or play with them. So how will I line up my pre-walk activities if I think this might be going on with my dog? How can I line up pre-walk activities with this potential reinforcer of dog, interaction? So what's like sniffing dogs or what's like playing with dogs that I could do before a walk? Well, I could actually let my dog play with dogs. If your dog is a dog park dog, you could go to the dog park before your walk for a little bit so they get some of that dog socialization out of their systems, or maybe a backyard play date. If your dog actually doesn't love playing with other dogs, but is really interested in the smells, sniffing other dogs, you could try to go to the dog park on off hours when there aren't dogs there and give them a chunk of time to just sniff all of those wonderful dog smells. And it could be that one important aspect of, say, your dog loves to play with dogs, and one important aspect of that is just the physical play and expending that energy and running around. You could try just doing some kind of intense high effort play with your dog yourself before a walk and see if that helps. Okay, so a specific example here I might give is, okay, if I have a dog who's lunging at dogs and I think they like dogs and sometimes that lunging pays off for them and they get to say hi, maybe I'll take my dog over to the dog park and let them sniff around for 30 minutes before our walk. So will adding some pre-walk activities fix your dog's behavior on walks? I don't know. Maybe if you can significantly reduce motivation for them to do that problem behavior to get the whatever reinforcers in play, you may see a reduction on walks. You will probably have to keep doing that pre-walk activity because the reduction in motivation is going to be temporary, most likely. But if you're willing to do, a little fetch before every walk, and you find that it does have a nice positive effect on your dog's behavior on the walk, then that could be a good option for you. Now, there's a pretty good chance you're still going to need to do some actual training and train some replacement behaviors for whatever your dog's problem behaviors are on walks. But even so, using these pre-walk activities, especially in earlier stages of training, could make your training on walks easier, because if you are able to reduce their motivation to pull, that'll just, they'll be less likely to do those problem behaviors. They might be more interested in whatever reinforcers you are using on your walks, and can make your training go more smoothly. So something to think about. So for instance, in that dog play example, maybe I take my dog to the dog park for 20, 30 minutes. Then I go for a walk and practice loose leash walking and attention and stuff like that after they've had a chance to get some of their dog yayas out. Okay, so tracking behavior. This may be a little bit nerdy, but for those of you who like this kind of stuff, I thought I put together a little spreadsheet for you that you can get for free. I would recommend personally tracking results of any sort of changes in your dog's routine or in your training that you try, so that you can actually see if it's working. Remember, our gut instincts aren't always that great when it comes to deciding whether or not something is helping us. That goes for our behavior as well. Okay, so tracking behavior problems. What does that mean? So an example of how you might do this if you're trying this pre-walk activity intervention is first just go ahead and record how many instances of problem behavior you have on each walk every day for a week. Don't change anything, just do your normal thing. And so you have kind of a baseline. Then go ahead and add a pre-walk activity before your walk every day for a few days or a week. A week is arbitrary, and you don't even have to do it for a week, but is just a suggestion you could try. And then continue to record instances of pulling or whatever your problem behavior is you're trying to work on with your dog when you do use that pre-walk activity. And then compare and see, okay, is this better or worse? So here's a little screenshot of the spreadsheet I made for you guys that you can get for free. I'll give you the link in a second. And I just put some fake data in here just so you could see what it does. You'll be recording the date, what intervention you're trying, if any. You've got a yes, no column for yes, I tried a pre-walk activity or no. You've got two columns, one for how many triggers did my dog see. So you would do this if you would use this column if there was sort of a discrete trigger for your dog's problem behavior, like dogs who lunge when they see other dogs. You would put how many dogs did my dog see on this walk. Then you've got a column for how many times did my dog actually do the problem behavior in the presence of that trigger. And then the next two columns that have the colors in them will self-populate, so you don't have to touch those. And the graph will also self-populate. So what I did here with my fake data is make one line that shows problem behavior frequency with respect to number of triggers. When there's no intervention in place, that's the red line. And then I made a green line that's problem behavior with, I said playing fetch on for my imaginary dog here, but with some intervention in place. So it's pretty simple, straightforward, but I don't know. I like having stuff set up for me. Even though these are simple, it's kind of a pain to set up these spreadsheets. So I thought it might be worth the effort to do it for you guys. One thing to think about is if your dog doesn't have a particular trigger that you recognize for their problem behavior, like it's not like something like my dog sees a cat and lunges, they just randomly pull. Shoot me an email and I will send you an adjusted version of this that doesn't require having a record of like number of triggers for problem behavior that your dog saw on a walk. Okay, so where do you get this? If you want the free spreadsheet, go here. It's just dogkindtraining.com/spreadsheet. You'll see a page that looks like this. Just put in your name and email, and you'll get an email with the link to the spreadsheet, and you'll be prompted to make your own copy. That's just so that my template, my original copy, doesn't get messed up. All right, everyone. So any questions about pre-walk activities, why you should bother trying them, anything about collecting some data on your walks? All right. Well, it was nice to see everybody. I hope that the spreadsheet is helpful for those of you who are inclined to use spreadsheets. And even if it's not, I hope that you do try some of these pre-walk activities and have some success with them. It's the kind of thing that, is very individual to your dog. So you'll have to try some stuff out and see if you get results. Like I can't tell you without seeing your dog what will help and what won't, but I can give you kind of a framework that you can use to think about what should I try for my dog and might this help my dog's behavior on walks. All right, so if you try this, if anyone tries the spreadsheet and likes it or hates it, please let me know so I can, well, I'd like to know if you like it, but if you don't like it, so I can make some changes or make it more user-friendly if there's some way I can do that. Also, if you try some of the pre-walk activities and have success or not, I would love to hear how that goes. I'm always interested to know, are there ways we can make these little Monday trainings more helpful for everyone? All right, everybody. I don't see any questions, so I will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a great week, and I hope have some nice walks this week.